whenever you're ready.
Media is important. I realize that it's extra. It's a luxury. This does not mean that it's not important. There are plenty of positive benefits to media, from relaxing to taking a break from the stressfulness of life to just having some fun. And I think we can all agree that media, from music to video games to movies, at least when used in appropriate moderation, has been a positive addition to our society. The problem comes when this media starts injecting inappropriate themes, especially for young children, focusing on violent video games. Parents are afraid that their kids will see this violence in games, and their kids will copy it, or their kids will have a spur of aggression deep within them. And some parents want to go so far to taking these video games off shelves. And this might seem a little bit extreme, but I want you to think back to other situations, such as in communist Cuba or China, where the product and media that people could consume were limited, and the government chose what you could watch, what you could buy from the store. And I think we all know here why communism is bad, and I don't think I need to go into that. But on those grounds of at least not going that far, I'd like to ask you if you are against the idea that they aren't causing violence, to at least not be too hasty in trying to ban them from shelves. But I do understand how scary it can be to see these video games that are played by mass murderers or killers or school shooters that are just available to buy on store shelves. I don't, however, think that these games are causing a direct correlation to violence. So I've delved deep into the subject, and I'm here to talk to you about, first, the effects that they have on the brain, and second, the connection to violence and real violent crimes, if there is any. And finally, I'll talk about a solution that should help solve both sides' problems. So first of all, I'm going to talk about the connection to things that happen in the brain. Now, a lot of people on the anti-violent video game side, they want them off shelves. They think that these violent games are causing aggression. There's a lot of negative effects, but mainly aggression, especially in young children's brains. This comes from the idea that these children will play these games and they see all this violence, and it causes a spur of aggression within them. Some parents think it's primal instinct or something like that, or maybe it's just frustration specifically with these violent games, and they think that it's causing their kids to be aggressive. I don't personally see this to be true, and for example, a few studies, such as one done by the APA, or the American Psychological Association, showed that there was no clear correlation between violence in games and aggression in young children. Now, originally the study actually had set out to prove that there was a link, but after they got done with it, their conclusion showed almost the exact opposite. And this is important because, as Chris Ferguson is quoted as saying in Heather Kelly's "Do Video Games Cause Violence?" He says, "I think the one good thing about the report is that this is the first time an organization had to come out and say there is no evidence to a link with violence in violent games, or aggression with violent games, excuse me." And as he said, this is important because now that an association as big as the APA and as reliable as the APA, especially on these topics, has to come out and has to say that yes, this is the definitive thing. It does not have a link to aggression. Once they come out and say that, more people will believe it. More people can see it as more fact than opinion, especially because so many researchers critiqued the study and kind of backed up the fact that it does not have correlation to aggression. Another study done by Oxford University, according to Peter Newhan, stated that the effects of nonviolent and violent games are nearly the same on the brain. According to the study, the amount of time spent playing video games is a more significant contributing factor when it comes to performance and behavior. More studies, such as one done by Michigan Tech University, prove about the same. They claim that these violent games are actually causing a decrease in aggression because they're helping kids relax or blow off some steam instead of causing more aggression to take place. And more games that are more frustrating but not necessarily violent have a more positive correlation on the aggressiveness in one's brain. Now let's talk about violence, and criminal violence specifically. Now, parents on the same side will claim that these games are also causing violence in children and young teens. And I can see where this opinion is coming from, and I don't think it's unviable by any means. But the more you look into the research, the more it kind of starts to dwindle away and fall apart. Although you do see a lot of these teens, and the person who committed the 2011 Norway attacks, his name was Peter, and he played a game called World of Warcraft. Yeah, and this game was deemed violent because it had killing in it, and this guy that went out and killed a bunch of people also played this game, and a lot of parents, they got scared that their kids were playing these games and pulled their kids off this game. And I personally don't see this game as causing this guy to go out and murder people. I mean, let's say this guy was eating breakfast, right, one morning, and maybe he chose cereal, or let's say he was eating a banana. He ate a banana for breakfast, and then that very same day he goes out and he kills people. And he kills all of these people in his terrorist attack. My immediate conclusion would not be that bananas cause people to go out and cause terrorism attacks. But it would be different if there were studies done on bananas, and every time someone ate a banana, that means they immediately went out and started, hacking people with a chainsaw. That would be a totally different story. But as with the support from these games, there's not really any correlation in between the studies and the claims that say these video games do cause real-life violence. Some of these studies, such as one stated in Sierra Bryant's article, said that to date there's no evidence that violent video games cause violent crimes. In fact, 2 recently published studies analyzed the effect of violent media, movies and video games alike, and on crime, and found increased exposure may have caused crime rates to decrease. So very similar as you see how it caused aggression to decrease, it's also causing crime rates to decrease. And Remy Barrett puts this very well, Remy Barrett Ursuline. She says, media sources make video games out to be the cause of actual violence, opposed to a sign of a violent individual. A violent individual may enjoy violent video games more than the average person, but the tendencies towards violence are already there, and therefore not created by the game itself. In conclusion, science nearly proves that there is not a positive correlation in between violence and violent games. Merely people that are already leaning towards violence may have more of a knack to play these games, and they may be more of a sign than a contributing factor. But even if you don't believe with this, let's say you are on the side against me and you believe wholeheartedly that these violent games are causing violent crimes, causing kids to be aggressive. That's okay. I don't have a problem with that. What I do have a problem with is taking away media for all of society to enjoy. So I think there's a solution that can sort of solve both of these sides' problems. So if you are against me, you want these games to not be available to your kids. You don't want these kids playing these games. You don't want young people being exposed to them. And if you're on my side, then you don't want these games being taken off of shelves. So since video games are a media, a rating system does in fact exist, and this rating system keeps kids from going in and picking up these games and buying them themselves if they're under the agreed age by society. And I think in tandem, together with this rating system, if we watch what our kids are doing. So this is where I want to call upon me, you, anyone to watch what kids are doing with their media. Because even if they can't go out and buy them, they can still go out and watch them on YouTube, see their favorite YouTubers playing these games that parents might not want. So if you are ever a parent or you just don't want these kids playing the games, I call upon you, I call upon me, I call upon all of us to make sure that these games are not being watched or played by these young individuals that shouldn't be playing these games. The rating system can't do it. The rating system can't do it itself, but I believe if we work together with it, then we can come up with a solution for both of us that will leave both sides happy. And this will help that video games stay on shelves and small children aren't subjected to violent media. Thank you. Stutter at the end. Oh my lord. Okay. Yeah.
You mentioned that you researched that there were studies that showed that the exposure of violent video games decreased crime rates. Did you have any certain percentages that showed that? How much it affected it?
No, I think it wasn't it just went down 2% though. It was a significant thing with the people that they monitored, and it was all teens on this study instead of, last one I had somewhere it was 90% 60, 70-year-olds that weren't in the sample size that needed to be measured. And here they took the right sample size, and it was significant enough for it to be noted. And I would say it said, trying to remember because it did have a number. I want to say it said over 1/4, but I'm not for sure. But I think it said somewhere around 1/4 over. Might have been 1/3, but it was a significant enough number for them to mention and cite it for it to be a big deal of their papers. Dylan.
How does the rating system work?
The rating system? Okay, so the rating system went through a long process, such as when movies have to go through the same thing, especially when it was first made. And they have like certain games that they have decided with, like,